I guess it's not quite official yet, but for all practical purposes, the Ontario election is underway. We've had the NDP platform drop this week. The Liberals are making a lot of promises, are making commitments. As I wrote last week, one of them was a handgun ban proposal, which I thought was a dumb promise, but they're making it anyway. The government is going to bring down its budget shortly, and then it will basically, as is traditional, it'll then be able to go, we will campaign on the budget. So we'll get to find out soon what they actually want to say. I was thinking back to a few years ago. I wish I remember which election this was. Ontario had a bunch of elections kind of all in a hurry back near the end of the Dalton McGuinty years. But one of them in particular, I have this very particular memory of it being an election that was completely make-believe. We knew there was a big report coming out into the state of Ontario's finances. Everybody knew it was bad. We didn't have the details yet, but it was very clear that the details were going to talk about really serious structural fiscal problems we had in Ontario. And the report was due shortly after the election. And since the report wasn't in hand yet, all three parties just sort of campaigned as if it didn't exist, or it wasn't coming, or that there weren't these big structural problems. I remember at the time thinking how strange it was that we had three parties, Progressive Conservatives, Liberals, NDP, all existing in sort of a shared make-believe of we're going to pretend that the provinces, finances are fine, and we're going to make all these promises, and we're going to, base all our budget projections, and we know full well we're going to have to revise them. But so long as the voters don't know, as long as they aren't paying attention to this report that's coming out soon, well, we don't need to talk about it because that would harsh our mellow. Because all we want to do is spend this election talking about the amazing things we're going to do for the people of Ontario. This election feels a little bit like that. And it's not exactly like that. It is a different circumstance now, and I'm not trying to pretend otherwise. But we do have promises coming out that really don't know, for one thing, what the future trajectory of COVID is going to be. Hopefully down and constantly improving, but who knows? We don't know what possible further shocks, economic or political, might come out of the current war in Europe. We don't know what inflation is going to do. We don't know what housing is going to do. And to an extent, this is eternal. All governments have to govern based on the facts before them on the ground, not the facts that they think might exist 3 years from now. We should, as Canadians, actually spend more time thinking about this. We often elect leaders based on what they're promising us. I think the last 2 years have maybe reminded us that we ought to also elect leaders basically who do we want in charge if everything goes very badly wrong. In the meantime, though, we are heading into another bit of a make-believe election where all the parties are going to make all kinds of commitments and promises, and none of them honestly have any idea what the facts on the ground are going to be in the next 6 months. I don't know who the people of Ontario would choose if the ballot box question was, who do you want in charge if life continues to be as weird as it has been the last couple of years? I know we won't even think about that. The assumption in the budget, even if they're a little bit conservative, small c, I just sort of mean cautious, will probably build in some margin of error for more COVID shocks or more supply chain disruptions or more inflation, et cetera, et cetera. But imagine 4 years ago if any of the parties had planned on being prepared for what we've been through in the last 4 years. It would have sounded insane. I am very skeptical that any of the parties today will actually have a plan in place to deal with a reasonable expectation of what the next 4 years might bring.